Welcome to the MSJC Internet Authoring Videocast.
In this video, you'll be learning how to complete Review Assignment 2. So in this review assignment, Allison is our client, and she has created another page for the Try and Succeed sports website, providing biographies of the coaches at the club. She has already written the page content, acquired image files, and created a style sheet for the page layout. She wants us to finish up the design of the page by developing a style sheet for the page's color scheme and typography. And then the preview of the page we see here. This is what it should look like when we're done. So on the next page now, in step 1, you can see that we're asked to open up our HTML editor and open up the TSS_coach_txt.html and coach_styles_txt.css files from our HTML02 review folder. We'll put our name and date in the comment section of each of those files. And then when we save them, we want to remove the _txt portion of each name. So we'll end up with TSS_coach.html and coach_styles.css. So you can see that I've got my Visual Studio Editor open here. I have opened the CSIS 115A folder from the root. And we can see that visually because it has the globe icon next to it. And then our data files are arranged a little bit differently than the way that the textbook has them set up. Instead of going into the HTML folder and then finding the review assignment folder, I have put all the review assignment folders right off of the root of the CSIS 115A folder. So you can see I have opened up the RA2 folder. Those are the files that we're going to be dealing with there. And so we were asked to open up this file here, the coaches_styles_txt.css. That's the CSS page, obviously. And then here's the HTML page, TSS_coach_txt.html. So we'll just simply add name and date in each of these. So now I'll go up to the File menu and choose Save As, so that way we keep our original file with the TXT in case we need to go back to it. So I'm just removing the _txt, and then I'll go ahead and save the file. And that'll be the HTML file we work on in this review assignment. Now we'll do the same thing for our coach styles. Just adding name and date. And then again back to the File menu, choosing the Save As option, getting rid of the _txt. So that way now we have two new files that we can work on, and we can always go back to those original files should we need to. In step 2, we're asked to go to the TSS Coach HTML file, and within the document head, we're going to create links for the two style sheets. So the layout style sheet, which is already created for us, and then the styles style sheet, which is the one that we'll be building the styles that we create in. So back in our editor, back into the Coach HTML, let's go into the head section underneath the title here. We'll go ahead and add a link element with an href value of coach_layout.css. And the relationship to that will be that it is a style sheet. And we'll create a link for the second style sheet, which is an href of coach_styles.css. And the relationship there also is a style sheet. And they're self-closing, so we just end it with a / close angle bracket. Let's go ahead and get the indenting correct there. Doesn't really matter, just looks better, reads better when you have them lined up. And so now that we've made a change there, I'm just going to go ahead and save that change. I believe in SOS, save often stupid, and you'll understand the stupid part. If you ever fail to save the work that you're doing in the page and then you lose power or your computer locks up and you got to go back and do it all over again. So I believe in saving often. In step 3, they ask us to take some time, study the content and the structure of the HTML file. And then we can go ahead and close up that document, because we'll be doing the rest of our work in the CSS file. So let's just pop on back into our editor here. And you can see that we have a whole list of items here, which is the menu. Bunch of links that are the menu, and we're going to style these so that the links are spread out in organized groups. And then further down you can see that the rest of the content is inside of a section element. It's ID'd as TSS_coaches. Initially we've got an H1 there, which is this meet our coaches heading, and then an aside, a block quote inside of the aside, couple of paragraphs, and then an article which is classed as coach bio, and then there's a header grouping there that has an H2 and some UL list items, an image of the coach, a couple of paragraphs then about the bio, then close up the article. Then we've got another article, another coach, their specifics, their image, some text about them, closed article, and then another coach, same format. And then you see we closed the section, and then we've got a footer, and inside of the footer we have an address element. So it's a pretty simple page. Go ahead and close that up now. As I said, we're going to be working exclusively within the style sheet from this point forward. In step 4 now, we're being asked to go to the Coach Styles CSS file. And at the top of the file and before the comment section, we want to add a @charset rule. So that'll set the character encoding to UTF-8. And then also, we're going to be importing a font. And so we want to add a @font-face rule. And that's going to define a web font which is named Noble. We'll be using that in some of the styling. I think it's in the H1 heading on the page. So back into our editor now, underneath of the, or I should say before the comment, we're going to add that @charset rule, which is going to be in quotes UTF-8. And then the @font-face rule. And then in curly braces, we're going to define two properties, the font-family and the name that we're going to refer to that as, which is going to be Noble. So whatever the font itself is going to be in the source attribute that we're going to add here. But when we go to the style sheet and we want to actually reference the font family, we're going to reference it as the name that we just typed in here. And we could have put Australopithecus pithecanthropus. It wouldn't matter as long as we used that same name when we were referencing it in the actual declarations that go along with the style rules when we're referring to that font family. So the source attribute is how we actually identify to the web browser how to locate the actual font that it'll be using as our Noble font. And that's going to be Noble-web font. And two different font formats here. So the first one is the WOFF format, which is the new web format. And two pieces of information in here. First of all, the URL where it locates it, and then the format that that font actually uses. So the way that it's encoded internally. So that's the first one, is the WOF file. Why is that giving me a red there? Oh, I missed the closing semi, or the closing single quote there. Okay, so now we're going to separate this value here by a comma, and then we'll add the second value, which is going to be the URL for the Noble font in the true type font format. So TrueType was an older font format developed by Microsoft and Apple jointly. And it's still supported in most web browsers. So again, that's just defining what the actual encoding is inside of that file that the URL is pointing to. So that way the web browser knows how to interpret that code properly. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and save. Control S. Back to our instructions. We've done 4A and 4B, so now we're up to step 5. So in the main structural styles section, we're going to do the following. Change the background color of the browser window by creating a style rule for the HTML element. And we'll set the background color to the value that's listed there, the hue, saturation, luminance value, or SHL value, which identifies the color, 27, and then the saturation and luminance values, so 72% for saturation, 72% for luminance. Then for the body element, we're going to create a style rule that sets the text color to a value of RGB 919191. Now, anytime that you see an RGB value that has the same three values, you know that's going to be some shade of gray. And those numbers are closer to black than they are to white, so it's going to be a dark shade of gray. The background color is going to be set to ivory, and the body text for the font stack Verdana, Geneva, Sans Serif. So we'll use that font family as the default fonts for our body. And the way that the font family works, when you use multiple font names in there, font families, it looks on the computer and checks for the first font type. So in this example, Verdana. So if that exists, then that gets used. If it doesn't exist, then it'll move on to Geneva. If that doesn't exist on the computer, then every computer has a default sans serif font, and that will be the font then that is used. Okay, so back in our editor now, underneath the main structural styles, we'll go ahead and create a selector for HTML. And then in the declaration section, we'll go ahead and do background-color. That's going to be an HSL 27, 72%, and 72%. So that'll do it for the HTML rule. Then we'll go ahead and set one for body, where the color, which is our text color, our foreground color, is going to be an RGB value. of 919191. Background color, I'm going to set that to a named color, ivory. And then our font family for the body text is Verdana, Geneva, and sans-serif. Remember, CSS is case sensitive, so we want to make sure that we type those in correctly. It looks like it picked up one of the default ones that Visual Studio uses and it added Tahoma in there. We'll just go ahead and get rid of that. There we go. In fact, it's got Verdana twice too. So when I'm not watching the screen, I'm just typing away. Sometimes that'll happen. The IntelliSense kicks in and adds what the software thinks I should have in there instead of what I want to have in there. Okay, so we'll save this now. Control S. We're up to step 6 now. We're going to create a style rule for the body footer address selector. So that'll target the address element that's inside of the footer element, which is off of the body. And really, we didn't need to have the angle bracket in there. That just says direct descendant, but we only have one footer, so whether we use the angle bracket or not doesn't really matter, but we'll put it in there. So for that selector, we want to set up several declarations here. We're going to set the background color to the value of RGB 222 12860, the font color to white, and then, which that's a weird way of writing that, so that's, you know, just the color property, the foreground color. There is no font color property in CSS. So anyway, the foreground color is going to be set to white, and then to the semi-transparent value of RGBA, so that's RGB with an alpha channel where we can adjust the transparency of our color. So 255, 255, 255, you should know that is white, and then 60% is the transparency on that one, so 60% opaque. In step C, the font style is going to be normal, displayed in bold, small capital letters. So we'll just use small caps is what they're getting at there. And then we'll add font size of 0.9 ems. So instead of points or pixels, ems is just another measurement size, or measurement type, I should say. 90% of that size is what we're telling the browser that we want to set that font size to. Line height will be 3 ems, and we'll be using the font stack of Noble, Verdana, Geneva, and sans serif. So here's the case now where it's going to use the web font, and if for whatever reason it can't find the web font, then it'll use the, start looking for those remaining 3 fonts there to display the text for our address. And then finally, we want to set the text horizontally centered. So that's just text align center. So going underneath the body now, we'll go ahead and add the body with the direct descendant identifier, footer, address. That's the selector. The background color is RGB 222 12860. Foreground color, the text color, white. And then we're adding a second color here, and the reason we're doing this, we're using the RGBA, which is a newer color format that's been implemented in the web browser. So if the person reading our page is using an older web browser and it doesn't support RGBA, it'll just use the white color. But since we're adding the RGBA after the declaration of color white, if the web browser does support RGBA, instead of using white, it will use the RGBA value. That's 0.6. Then our font is normal, so we're using the shorthand here instead of font family and all the different specifications that go along with font. We're going to put them all in together. So small, dash caps, bold, and then our points, our font size is going to be 9.9 ems over, so line height 3 ems. And then just for clarity's sake here, we'll go to the next line and put in Noble, comma, Verdana, comma, Geneva, and then sans dash serif. And then finally, text align center. Save that, Control S. So that's going to be our last style for here. We'll just go ahead and get rid of that extra space. So back to our instructions now. We're moving down to step 7. So now we're moving down to that heading style section. And we're going to set up a rule for all of the H1s. Display the text with the normal font weight from the font stack Noble, Verdana, Geneva, sans serif. Set the letter spacing to 0.2 ems and set the margin to 0 pixels. So we're under heading styles. We want H1 to be our selector. Font family. Noble, Verdana, and then it's going to want to put this whole stack in here like that. So let me just get rid of all of this and put our Geneva in there. Sometimes IntelliSense can be nonsense. So the font weight is normal. Letter spacing, so that's the inner character spacing, 0.2 ems, so it gets some additional spacing between each character. And then we want to set the margin on the H1 to be 0. Now when you use a 0 value, you don't put any measurement listing, measurement type after it. So just the number 0 is fine there. Save that, back to the instructions. Up to step 8 now. So Allison wants us to format the main H1 heading at the top of the page. Create a rule for section hashtag TSS_coaches. So if we go back and look at the HTML, we'll see that the section is ID'd. That's what the hashtag represents. There is an ID value. So it's ID'd as TSS_coaches. So let's open that up here real quick just to remind ourselves. Come down to the section, which is right there. And there you can see it is indeed ID'd as TS_coaches. So the selector then for that, go underneath of our previous one here, is section hashtag TSS coaches, so the value of that ID, and then specifically the H1 after the section, the beginning of the section element. So font dash size here is 2.5 ems. The color is an HSL value of 27, this time 82% and 85% for the saturation and luminance. Then we want to add padding left. Oh no, I'm missing the background color. So background color, and that's going to be an HSL value also. That's going to be 27, 6%, 21%. And then a padding dash left, going to be 10 pixels. Saving that, Control S. Up to step 9 now. Allison also wants us to format the H2 headings for each coach. So we'll create a style rule for article, because the H2s are inside of an article element. And the article elements are classed. That's the period there. Indicates it's a class type. And coach bio is the value. And we're targeting specifically now the H2 then that's within the articles that are classed as coach bio. So we'll set the font size there to 1.6 ems, normal weight, and the font color RGB 240, 125.0. So our selector is article.coach _ bio, and then space H2 curly braces, and then we're going to do font dash size 1.6 ems, font dash weight, that'll be normal, and then our color is RGB 240, 125.0. Back to the instructions. Step 10 now. Allison has inserted a comment from an athlete about the coaches. We want to format this comment by going to the block quote styles section. That's within the style sheet itself, right? And creating a style rule for the aside block quote selector. And in there, we'll have these declarations. We want to set the font size to 0.95 ems using the font stack of Comic Sans, MS, and Cursive. So if Comic Sans doesn't exist on the computer displaying our page, it'll revert to the default Cursive, which is included in all of the font stacks and all the web browsers on all the different operating systems. And then set the font color to RGB 222, 12860, and then use a semi-transparent background color that is white. So 255, and there's a typo there, notice. There is no such color that is 2555. So the RGBA should be 255, 255, 255, 0.75, so 75% transparency. Again, we're doing the trick like we did before. For support of the older browsers, we'll have one RGB value, and then we'll follow it with a second value that's RGBA that has transparency to it for the newer browsers. And then we'll set the padding space to 10 pixels, so that's all the way around. And then define the opening and closing quotes for the element using the Unicode character of 201C for the opening quote and 201D for the closing quote. So back in our editor, in our coach styles, underneath of the block quote styles now, we want to use the selector aside block quote. And then in the declaration section, we're going to set the font dash size to 0.95 ems. Font dash family. It's going to be in quotes, capital C, comic, capital S, space, capital S, sans, space, capital MS. So anytime you have a font name that has spaces in it, it must be encapsulated in quotes. And then we'll add a comma and then throw in there the default cursive font in case it doesn't, the system that's viewing our page doesn't support the Comic Sans. Then the background color is an RGB of 222 128 60. Then we've got the foreground color as white 255, comma 255. Oops. So 255, 255, 255, and then 0.75 for the transparency. Why are we getting a green squiggly here? Oh, I forgot my RGBA. That's kind of important, isn't it? Okay. Now for quotes, it's just the quotes property. And then inside of there, we indicate with a backslash. So make sure you're using the character that's under or above your enter key on the keyboard there. That's a backslash as opposed to the one underneath of the question mark, which is a forward slash. So when you're doing escape codes is what this is called. You're telling the interpreter here that we don't want to treat the numbers as actual numbers here, but treat it as code. So backslash is how we indicate that, and then we put the code in 201 capital C inside of quotes there. So that's the opening quote. And then the closing quote is a value of backslash 201D. And finally, padding all the way around, so we just put in 10 px there. So no direction means that all four sides will implement the padding of 10 pixels. Save it. Back to our instructions. Step 11 now. We want to format the appearance of the opening quotes by creating a style rule for the aside block quote before selector. So that's a pseudo selector. And we want to write a bold-faced open quote before the block quote with a font size of 1.6 ems from the font stack Times New Roman, then Times, and then Serif. And then we want to format the appearance of the closing quote with a similar style. So this is just using a different pseudo selector. It's going to be the after pseudo selector. And then the same properties, going to be bold-faced and 1.6 ems in Times Roman in the stack. So the selector is aside block quote and then 2 colons before the content is an open dash quote, the font dash family, and now we have another font that is spaces in the name, so that's Times Roman, New Roman, sorry. So it's got to be in quotes there. Then comma, Times, comma, serif. So if you don't know the difference between a serif font and a sans serif font, just the word sans in Latin means without. So the serif is the tick marks that you see on characters in fonts like Times Roman. And then if you use like Helvetica or Arial, they don't have those tick marks, so those are called sans serif fonts. So just a little typography information there for you. And then our font dash size, 1.6 ems. And then the font weight bold. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy that rule, paste it underneath, and then just simply change the pseudo selector from before to after, because all of the other settings there remain the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Control S. I take that back. That's there is one change there. That's right. The before is an open quote and the after is a closed quote. So I do need to change the value on the content to close quote for the after. All right, up to step 12 now, formatting the appearance. No, we did 11 and 12 already, didn't we? So we're down to 13, sorry. Next, we're going to format the appearance of the navigation list by going to the navigation style section in the style sheet. We'll create a style rule for body, descendant selector, nav, and it'll set the text of the navigation list in a font size of 0.8 ems and a line height of 2 ems. So we're down here now underneath of navigation styles. Remember the selector is body, right angle bracket, nav, font dash size, 0.8 ems, and line height is 2 ems. Back to our instructions now. Let's move on to the next page. In step 14, we want to create a style rule for nav child descendant UL that removes the list marker, so the bullet essentially that's to the left of all our list items, and then also sets left padding to 5 pixels. So that selector is nav right angle bracket UL. That targets all of the list items. And then we use the list dash style dash type property to remove the bullets that we normally see there for our list items by setting the value to none. And then padding dash left is going to be 5 pixels. So just indenting from the left 5 pixels. In step 15, Allison wants to break up. It's a really long list of LIs that we have there. So we're going to create a rule for the 6th, the 16th elements where we just add some margin to the top of those. So it'll basically look like we're grouping the elements that way by putting a little space in. So the selector then that we use here is the nth of type selector. And the way that that works is, again, we're targeting the nav right angle bracket UL right angle bracket LIs. But here, where we add the nth of type, so we put in there colon nth dash of dash type, and then what we're targeting is list items, right? So we want to say the 6th list item. For the 6th list item, we just want to put in there margin dash top colon 20px. Now, if it were me, I would actually add the next selector in here. I would just take this, copy it, add a comma there. Here, let me just show you what I'm talking about. So this is how I would do it. The textbook author does it a little bit differently. They have 2 separate rules for this. Don't think it's necessary since we're using margin top of 20 for both of them. I would just put them together. Either way is correct, right? It's still going to have the same impact no matter what, so we could just copy it this way and do it like this as well. Just can tell you from experience, when you're using the same type of formatting, that it works best just to put them together with the same selector, with, you know, combine two selectors together and have the one property. But either way is correct. In step 16 now, for every previously visited or unvisited hypertext link within the nav ul li selector, so there's going to be anchors inside of each of the list items. We're going to set the RGB color there to, this is kind of a medium gray, so 151, 151, 151, and then remove the underlining from the text link too. So text decoration none, essentially, is the way that works. In fact, we could do both of these here because they're very similar. In 17, we went for the hovered or the active hypertext links within that nav right angle bracket ul right angle bracket li. So in other words, the li is nested within the unordered lists that are inside of our nav element. We want to set their text color to 222, 12860, and the underline, make sure that the hypertext link is underlined. So the selector again is nav, right angle bracket ul, right angle bracket li, and so the first one is a : visited, and then the second one is nav, right angle bracket ul, right angle bracket li, and here the author is actually demonstrating what I just talked about a minute ago, which is actually combining two selectors together when you're using the same declarations for both. So the color here is going to be RGB 151, 151, 151. And then we want to remove the underline, so we're going to do text dash decoration none. So that's both for the visited anchors and the link anchors. And then the second selector is nav, right angle bracket ul, right angle bracket li. And this time we've got the anchor in the hover state. That's one selector. And then we'll add nav, right angle bracket ul, right angle bracket li. And then this time we're going to use the active selector. So the color there is RGB 222, 128, 60. And then the second one, I shouldn't say the second one, the next property, we're doing the text decoration, and then this time we're assigning the value of underline to it. Okay, let's save that. Control S, back to our instructions here. We're just about done. Step 18, we're going to the paragraph style section in the style sheet there. We're going to set a rule that sets the top margin and the bottom margin to 10 pixels, the right margin to 30 pixels, and the left margin to 0 pixels for every paragraph in the document. So let's go down here to paragraph in our style sheet. And we're just using the P selector because that's how we get paragraph elements. Setting up the margin there to 10px, 30px, 10px, and 0. Now remember how it works when you use the shorthand like this. Instead of having to indicate each individual side there, you just put in the 4 values. So it's just, think of it like a clock. So the first value, 10 pixels, is top. The second value is right. The next value is bottom. and then the last value is to the left. So just think of a clock starting at the top and working your way around clockwise. That's what each value, the position, the side that each value represents there. Top, right, bottom, and then left. Saving that, one more rule to go here. Step 19, every coach has a list of accomplishments. You want to go to the list styles section in our style sheet, insert a style rule for the article that is classed as coach bio, and then the child descendant header and the child descendant UL selector that displays the check.png. So there's an image file now, and we're going to use it as the bullet that you see before the list item. So that becomes the list marker, that check PNG file. And then also we want to set the margin space to 0 pixels except for the bottom margin, which should be set to 10 pixels. So back to our editor. I'm going to go down now to the list styles section here. And the selector is article.coach. It's underscore actually, underscore bio. And then right angle bracket, it's going to be the header element, right angle bracket UL. We want the list-style-image property to be set to that image. So we use the URL to pass in the value that we want the browser to locate, or the name of the file that we want the browser to locate, which is check.png. And then again, we're going to use the shorthand here for our margin values. That's going to be 0, 0, 10, 10px, and then 0. And that does it for our style sheet. Step 20, save our changes. Go ahead and open up Coach in our browser and verify that everything looks correct. So what I want to do here is I'm just going to preview it locally. So in Visual Studio, I'm going to right-click on TS Coach. And then from the context menu that pops up here, I'm going to choose View in Browser. And the menu is not on the left where it's supposed to be, and the side is not located where it's supposed to be either. So I'm guessing maybe we have a problem with the link in the HTML file here when we link to the layout. Yeah, so you can see there, I typoed, I put in 3 C's instead of CSS. So let's save that, and then even in our design window now you can see how everything is aligned much better. So let's just go back and preview that again in the browser. There we go, much better. So you should have those links separated, remember, between 5 and 6 link and 15 and 16. We've got that margin setting in there. We've got the aside here that has the Comic Sans with the open and closed quote that we added. This is our H1 here, which is supposed to be the Noble font, but you won't be able to see that locally on your browser. When you're importing fonts, it doesn't work unless you're running it from a web server. So once you publish it up to the student web server and you go back with your URL and test it out from there, then you'll see that it is indeed the Noble font, but you won't see it locally. And while we're here, why don't I point out that we are looking at this locally, and we know that because if you look at the URL, it says localhost. So please never ever post localhost as the URL for your assignment. I cannot, from my computer, get to your computer to see the page, the HTML page on your computer. It has to come from the IA web server. So that should always begin with ia.msjc.edu, never localhost, at least for the link that you're posting. for your assignments. So make a note of that, please. So basically what I'm looking for here is the noble font here, looking for the quotes and the Comic Sans here and the aside. You should see the checks besides the LIs here, the picture. We didn't really set up that format. I think that's all in the layout. And then there should be this orange background at the bottom and the caps, the all caps for the footer. So that's pretty much it for review assignment number 2. Until next time, happy coding. If you liked this video, please click the like button and leave us a comment down below. I also would appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, click the notification bell so that you'll be notified when new videos are posted.